Well, first of all, let me say good afternoon to members of the media. The BIU has had phone calls concerning the results of the general election, and I thought instead of making comments to different reporters or media that was calling me for comments about the election, I thought I'll call a press conference this afternoon and speak to everybody all at once. I will make a brief statement, then I'll answer any questions that you might have. As you know, the general election was held on Monday. The OBA is now the new government, so on behalf of the BIU membership, we'd like to congratulate Mr. Craig Cannoner, the new Premier and leader of the country, and the OBA for winning the recently concluded general election. Allow me to say also that, of course, that the BIU is extremely disappointed that the PLP was not able to retain the government, recognizing that when you look at the general elections of 1993, 1998, 2003, 2007, and now 2012, this is the low voter turnout that we've had since since we've been having general elections. I think the voter turnout turned out to be somewhere, we think it was 67.4%, right? So when you look at the overall turnout for this general election of 2012, it was the lowest low voter turnout we've seen since we've been having general elections. So I entertain any questions that you might have at this point in time.
Mr. Furbert.
Mr. Trott.
We have a Labor government now removed from power, and a new, relatively unknown party at the helm. What does it mean for workers' rights in Bermuda? Well,
I don't know if I can. I'm going to be the one to answer that question for you, Mr. Trott. You probably have to ask the OBA that question since starting new government, right? Recognizing that even when we had a PLP government, Labor had never asked for any favors from the PLP government. All we asked for Labor to be treated fair and equal, and make sure that fairness was obtained in the workplace, whether it was legislation that had to be written to protect the rights of workers or whatever have you. But we certainly never asked the PLP for any favors. And we didn't intend to ask the OBA for any favors. All we want to make sure that whatever laws are on the books, because we believe at the BIU there are laws on the books that are only for the unions. There are no laws on the books for employers. And that's been on the PLP government and the UPP government, and now I don't know what's going to happen on the OBA government. So you have to ask the OBA government as to how unions are going to fare now that the OBA is not in power.
Concerning the dispute between Stevedore Limited and the Hamilton Dock workers,
yes.
The former government had seemed to try to take a middle stance by calling for arbitration and even going so far as to call for an injunction to block the management from laying off staff as they wanted to do. Now we have a new party in power. Is there any concern about the future of the dock workers? Or
well, no matter which government is in power, if a labor dispute exists between the two parties, I'm hoping that the responsibility of the government is to make sure those matters get resolved, and they get resolved in a reasonable manner. So the mere fact that the previous minister stepped in and said to the two parties, you all can't agree, so I'm going to refer the matter to arbitration. Whether we now have an OBA government, what their position is going to be on that, I'm certainly hope it's going to be the exact same thing. There's a dispute exists between the Poor Workers Division of the BIU and Stevedore Services about the process moving forward as to what's going to happen on the Hamilton docks. And I'm hoping that what the previous minister had done was refer the matter to arbitration, and hoping that whoever Mr. Cannoner appoints as the new Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry would hopefully agree with that approach. The latest, all I can tell you is that I know that Stevedore Services were going to go before the courts to try to get the injunction that was given or that the minister was granted. They was going to go and try to get that injunction lifted. I haven't heard anything since that, so I don't know how successful they'll be.
And what do you make of the low turnout that you referenced? Why do you think that is, and what do you make of the OBA's pledge that they're going to bring in absentee voting?
They're going to bring in absentee voting? Well, let me say that I think that when we look at the overall, I guess, situation as it relates to the election, as I mentioned to you a moment ago, in 1993 we had a 75.8% turnout. And that was in 1993. 1998 we had an 81.4% turnout. In 2003 we had a 75.4% turnout. 2007 we had about a 75.8% turnout, and in 2012 we had 67.4%. I guess, frustration. Because people have been saying that they're not going to go to the polls to vote this time around because they were upset with the government about certain things that they had not done, or they were concerned about the employment rate. But I think, to be fair, and I think when the BIU looks at the overall balance of what took place, whilst the unemployment rate in Bermuda went to lengths that it hadn't gone to since the Great Depression of 1929, I would like to give the government some credit that they did preserve the unemployment rate from going even higher. Because had the government not stepped in and bailed out the Bank of Butterfield, then 800 more jobs would have been. Had the government not stepped in and gave the concessions to the hotel sector, there are over 2,000 workers that work in the hotel industry. From our point of view, we've got about maybe 1,500 or 1,800 members. So if the government would have given payroll tax exemption there, what would happen to employment there? And the final piece is that if the government wouldn't have gave exemption to the retail sector, you would have had huge unemployment in this country. So the unemployment rate could have went at around 20%. So whilst I understand the unemployment rate went to about 3,500 to 4,000 people, I like to think the government does deserve some credit for trying to keep the unemployment to a certain level, acceptable level, recognizing that Bermuda doesn't export anything. And when you have other countries' unemployment that's where, USA, it basically has, all kinds of jobs and has a very diverse economy, and their unemployment got as high as maybe 13 or 14%. Bermuda's unemployment rate is around 10%. I heard people talking about over how 4,000 people that's unemployed. We've got another 4,000 people that's unemployed. But I would like to think that, I remember Colonel Burt saying almost 2 years ago, right, that, we were looking to get people employed at certain jobs, and what he was encouraging people to do at that point in time was take this job now in the event that you'll get another job further down the road. And that would have also helped to keep other Bermudians gainfully employed. So we can't just look at it in a vacuum and say that, well, the government hadn't done anything. Remember, the government also put a freeze on certain categories. They put freeze on categories in the garden sector. They put a freeze on certain other categories. I know that Minister Wilson, when she was there, put a freeze on certain categories. And when Minister Minus came in, she put a freeze on quite a few categories before she finally opened them up after about 6 months or so. So to be fair, the government did try to do what it can to try to assist, the employment in this country as it relates to. So the whole question of why people stayed away in the end, you'd have to ask the roughly about 32% of voters that didn't come to vote this time around, exactly why they decided to stay home, because, only they can answer that. I can't answer that. We basically asked everyone to exercise their right to vote. If you go back 40, 50, or 60 years ago, everybody didn't have a right to vote. People fought for people to have the right to vote. There were blood, sweat, and tears that went into making sure people got a chance to vote. And for people to say, well, I'm not going to go to the polls and vote, you got to know, when you're going to go to the polls and vote, it's a vote for the OBA or vote for the PLP if the current government is in power. So, you can I guess you can draw different conclusions about what has taken place and the reasons why it has taken place. People are frustrated with the current government, and for whatever reason, whether it's the unemployed or whether it's other people who say, well, I'm not voting, and they didn't vote. And that's one of the reasons why. And I want to make this point crystal clear. Whilst I understand the OBA is a new government, I honestly think they didn't win the government. The people of this country who didn't vote gave the government to the OBA. That's my opinion.
Mr. Furbert,
yes, sir.
The OBA is on record as saying they will create 2,000 jobs before their term will be up. You believe that this new government can deliver on that promise?
Mr. Trott, I'm very optimistic, right? But I remember watching the general election in the United States when Mitt Romney promised the exact same thing, that they can, probably get 12 million jobs over the next 4 years or so. And everybody put all the numbers together and they didn't see how that could happen. Now, if what I heard the OBA saying is that, and you have to be, I honestly think like we need to think outside the box here. Because if the OBA is saying, well, we can create 2,000 jobs, why, and I guess there have been comments made that, they work closely with business. So have they been holding off on jobs all this time while the PLP has been in power? You need to ask yourself that question. Because how all of a sudden we can all of a sudden just create 2,000 jobs because now we've got a new party in place? It's very scary. That's scary. The country is supposed to benefit from the programs that we're doing. And whether you're the OBA as the opposition, or the PLP as the opposition, or the OBA as the government, or PLP as the government, you need to do what you can to do on behalf of the people of this country to move this country forward. And my comment when I made it on Monday was only restricted the OBA, and I don't see I haven't seen one. Have you all seen one? The OBA's platform? The PLP produced one. They handed it out. People are taking me to task because I said the OBA don't have a platform, and I'm being called a liar. I would have thought that the OBA had a platform, even though I'm not a member of the OBA. I'm a citizen of this country. I would like to see exactly what that platform says on education, what it says on different things about what they're going to do when they come into power. I have not seen it. And that's why I made my statement that, you know, there's a party that's formed, been here 15 months, don't have no platform, you know what direction they're going to take the country, and all of a sudden, they're now in power. Any other questions? Sure.
Yeah, so what do you make of Mr. Kennedy's relative lack of political experiences? We've got a premier who's only been in politics for a couple of years.
Well, all I would say to you is that, you know, the people of Bermuda have spoken. He wants that they'll come out and vote. And they've decided to vote Mr. Cannoner and his party in power. Now, it's up to him to decide as to whether or not he can provide the leadership that is needed as the premier of this country to move this country forward in the right direction. I would say that to be fair to him, that, you know, he's one person. He has to have, I guess, you know, his support base around, whether it's the Ministry of Finance, whether it's, you know, the Attorney General or whoever it is. So, you know, it's like President Obama. He's the President of the United States, but he needs to have a team around him, like my current position at the BIU. I'm the current president, but I still have to have people to work with. No man's an island unto themselves. You can't work by yourself. You need to have a team, and hopefully he'll put a strong team together. I saw the front page of the paper today, and that's going to be very interesting. We're going to offer a member of the PLP position in his cabinet. That's going to be very interesting.
But do you think he's got what it takes to be premier?
Do I think he has what it takes to be premier? I don't think that's a question for me. I think that's a question for Mr. Cannoner.